All right, everybody, we're back. You know the routine, no nets, no retakes. We just pushing that button and going. I'm going to defer to my off-screen sidekick. My lovely wife, Beverly, is going to read your questions from this week. And like I've been saying, if we don't answer them, send them in again, and we'll get to them eventually if you're persistent enough. Okay, Bev, what's the first question?
Mickey writes, I think the move to baggers ended the motorcycle club lifestyle. No longer building bikes, trading parts, etc.
Well, I think there's some substance to that, but I think some of these guys they take these baggers apart and they do a lot of custom stuff to them. Uh, you know, it's a lot of transitions, a lot of things have changed over the years, and I think that in the old days, people were interacting and doing things. Well, I think they're doing it now. It's just maybe not quite as in depth, and also times change. In the old days, you couldn't ride a bagger even in the pack, and when they finally did let baggers in the pack, they had to ride in the back. So, that question's got substance, but people change, people adapt. Okay, next one.
Cletus Jones writes, can you talk about mob figures you personally have known? Any stories?
Well, I was in prison with Michael Franchise. Sam Sorrentino in there. Sam Sorrentino was the underboss of the Los Angeles crime family. There was Carlos Marcello, and Sam Sorrentino had tried to bribe a judge. Carlos Marcello was a crime figure down in New Orleans, very powerful guy, older guy, old school guy. And he, along with Sorrentino, they tried to bribe a judge, and they got caught, went to jail. That was in Terminal Island. I ran into Sorrentino. There was a lot of other mob guys down there. Rosero Gambino was there. He was the Pizza Connection guy. Everybody knows him. If you're a mafia buff, you know these names. I also had a captain from one of the crime families out in New York. I'm not going to name him because I don't know what his status is right now. But it was funny. I had a guy come and intimidate me in a sense. And I'm looking over here at my wife. I'm laughing about this. Kind of a funny story. He came to me and almost tried to intimidate me. He had came to Ventura, Southern California, with a truck. I think they hijacked. There was a bunch of stuff on it, and they were actually going merchant to merchant selling this stuff. And they came to their tattoo shop, and they were pushing on us to buy things. The guy was kind of semi-rude. So I called this mafia captain in one of the five families in New York, said, who is this guy? And the guy came back to me about 4 or 5 hours later and literally was about to get on his knees. I told him to knock it off. He was so embarrassed and so scared that he had, disrespected me that he wanted me to call this guy I knew and say everything was all right. So, I had some interactings. I tried not to do business with him. I didn't feel it was good for the whole club at large. The feds are always looking for a tie. I know they had, I mentioned this mob captain a couple of times. They had pictures of him and I in Hollywood having dinner together. I mean, actual movies of us getting out of home type movie things, of going in and out of the Rainbow Room and some other places in LA. My dad used to go to Vegas every week with my mom. Not every week, I misspoke myself. Every month, every 6 weeks with my mom and dad. They'd stay in the old part of town. And his name was George Christie Sr. Well, he just would go by George Christie. And I got subpoenaed to a grand jury for the Teamsters about Teamster money. And they did some investigative work, and they found my dad's name going to these old school hotels at the old part of town in Vegas. And they accused me of being part of the casino skim in Las Vegas because I used a lawyer that was associated with the Stardust skimming scheme. I don't know. So yeah, I had some pretty good relationships with the mob guys. Tried not to mix our business with theirs, but there was occasion we did each other favors. So, anyways, next question.
Okay, Mr. Cotter's mom, did you have to burn off your tattoos?
No, I didn't burn off my tattoos. In fact, I didn't even cover them up, and I'm not saying that to be cavalier, or disrespectful. The idea of the outdates on tattoos was so you could not masquerade as a Hell's Angel or still act like you had affiliation with the Hell's Angels, like by showing your tattoo off or whatnot. And my public exit was so, all over everywhere. Sonny made it a point. He wanted everybody in the world to know I was no longer in the club. So when they told me to get my tattoos covered, I said no. I'm not gonna cover them. Sonny took care of that for me with his big mouth. But so I still have my tattoos. I didn't burn them off. It was kind of a funny story. They called Little George and asked him to ask me one last time. This is when Georgie was still alive, to cover my tattoos. And Georgie just said, "You guys call him. I'm not calling him." So, anyways, next question.
Okay, Huggy Bear hiked. I don't know what that's about. Do you remember when you were? Do you remember where you were when Jerry Garcia died, and its effects on you?
Well, I do. I was in Sturgis. I was in Spearfish, actually, and I had the TV on with the sound off. We were listening to music, and I saw some stuff on the, like file footage of the dead on TV. And so I, turned the music down, turned the TV up, and realized Jerry had died. And, look, was I good friends with Jerry? We were friends, and, good enough friend where he would call me to pick him up at the airport. We had some very, personal conversations. I guess as good as you can be with a friend that's a celebrity, and it did affect me. But I wished he would have been around. Just talking about him a couple of days ago, it's amazing to think all my friends are gone almost. Anyways, Jerry was a friend. I consider him a friend. And I think he considered me a friend as well.
Okay, this is good. Pat met California. How did you deal with the rain?
The rain. I had some high-tech rain gear, and I'd check the weather stations in the morning when we'd ride. That was the go-to station as we'd spend the night in a motel. We'd have on the Weather Channel. It was kind of a new in the late or early 80s, late 70s maybe, but early 80s for sure. And we'd turn the Weather Channel on. And if it said and called for rain, those things are pretty accurate. I would put my rain gear on, and people would look at me in my pack and go, "He's got his rain gear on. We're not stopping if it starts raining." So we rode right through it. I had waterproof boots, high-tech rain gear. We put our patches over our rain stuff and ride on to wherever we were going. Okay?
Okay, Nomad writes, do you know why Sonny left Arizona and returned to Oakland?
Well,
it's like where elephants go to die, right?
Yeah, well, it was expressed to me that he went back to Oakland so he could be buried in the Oakland cemetery, which he isn't. But I may have said this before, but I'll tell you what I was told. I was told by some Arizona members that his wife had worn Mr. and Mrs. Barger's welcome out in Arizona. She's a real troublemaker. She worked for me for 20 years. Prior to that, she was hanging around in Ventura, bouncing around. I think that Arizona finally had enough of her antiques and, told them both to get out of Dodge. But that was one of the rumors. I know that the cover story was, "I'm going back to Oakland, I'm going to die, and I'm going to be buried in the cemetery." Well, he's not there, so I've got a lot of theories. I've had a lot of people give me input on what I think. Maybe I'll do a show on it one of these days.
Okay, NK Rainman writes, can someone join an outlaw club without becoming a felon?
And, he was careful to say he wasn't trying to insult anybody. You can join an outlaw club and without any felonies, but probably by the time you leave, you're going to have some. I'm a multiple felon now. They just keep targeting you and targeting you and targeting you till they get you. And they got a lot of time, they got a lot of money, and they're experts at what they do. So I would say you join and immerse yourself in that outlaw lifestyle, you're probably going to walk away with a felony at some point in time.
Okay, David Strausser writes, how prevalent are informants in Ventura and other chapters?
Well, the record
Too
speaks
prevalent.
for its. My lovely wife couldn't resist. Look, the record speaks for itself. There's been informants all over the country, in Europe. Uh, you know, these heavy sentences, people just don't want to do the time. And my advice to you is work alone. Okay.
Okay, Andy writes, George, oil your door hinges. So this is about me.
Yes. Last week, after the performance, Beverly's performance, she opened the door and it squeaked. But I'm going to tell you why we don't oil the door. Better yet, ask your mom. She'll tell you why.
Okay, Chris writes, are authorities stupid enough to ban clubs?
Well, I don't think it's about banning clubs. I think it's about exerting power. And, there's people out there, I testified again as an expert defense witness last week, and it's about power. The prosecutor was so angry with some of the things I said. It's about dominance and it's about control. I feel that if they did, ban all the outlaw clubs, they'd just go underground. It'd be even harder. You could deny they existed. I don't know. I just say I'm a Marine. You just adapt to whatever happens. But I don't think it's about banning the club. I think it's really about dominance, and that's what it is.
AM Bulldog writes, be the historian you say you are. Of course you know.
Well, I'm going to tell you again, I'm going to defer to your mother. She knows. And if she wants to tell you, she'll tell you. She may not think you're mature enough to know. Okay.
Okay, Doug Ross. I wish we could reach out to the scammers.
And strangle them one by one.
Yeah.
The scammer thing's getting out of control. There's all kinds of... Beverly, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
There's all types... My lovely wife's departing now. And try not to squeak the door, will you? Look, this is the deal. I have people write me all the time. Are you on this? Are you on that? No, I'm on Facebook. I've got 3 accounts on Facebook. A personal one and then 2 public ones. One's got, about 15,000 followers. It's tied to my Instagram. And the other one's got 125,000 followers. And I'm also on Instagram with 400,000 followers. So that's the only social media stuff I have. If people are writing you and asking you for gift cards and, tell them to go talk to your mother or something, man. Come on, let's everybody kind of don't fall for this bullshit. I know everyone's smarter than that. Okay, so I wanted to get into talking about, it's been a while, I want to talk about Josh Harber. And when I got back from Spain, I'd been here for a little while, and 2 Phoenix cold case detectives showed up at my home here in Ventura. This is after I got back, and they wanted to know about Josh Harber. And, this wasn't the first visit. The first visit from the homicide detectives came after Josh's murder in 2002. They interviewed several Ventura Hells Angels members at my daughter's law office. And, of course, nobody saw anything, and my daughter had warned the homicide guys before they came out, nobody's going to say anything. No one's going to make a statement. But a little about Josh Harber. Josh was murdered June 2002. He was at the Coyote Wild Bar and Grill in Cave Creek, Arizona. And at the time of his death, his mother was very distraught, as everyone would think she would be. She held me responsible for the murder. I'm not sure what her position is now, 25 years later. You know, I had nothing to do with the death of Josh Harber. Josh Harber was one of the young guys. He'd been around my boy and some of the other younger guys. He was a little bit younger than them, but he was a young outlaw type with real old school values. He hung around David Ortega a lot. He's learned a lot of stuff from David, dressed like David, and whatnot. But I have my own ideas of what happened, and I'm going to get into that today. And it was a senseless murder back then, and I still think it, in today's standards, still a senseless murder. But we're going to go back to December of 2001, and I was in the middle of fighting a 59 count indictment, and I was in jail with a protective order, which did not allow me to talk to any Hells Angels. But somehow David Ortega got word to me in solitary confinement that they were bringing Josh up for vote. He wanted to know how I felt about it, and I put all my trust in David, and I sent word back to David. He had my support. So by the end of December, I was called out for a visit. Josh was not part of that protective order, so he got right through the visiting. They called me out hadn't had a visit in months, called me out for a visit, and there sat Josh, and he was now a Hell's Angel. And I was happy to welcome him into the club. Like I stated, Josh was a young guy, but with old school values. And sitting there exchanging ideas and thoughts and with Josh, I never thought 6 months later he would be dead. I came back. My case kind of unraveled, collapsed under its own weight. The ironic thing was I had warned these guys not to go to Arizona. I had a bad feeling, and I'm one of these guys, I go with my gut. And Scott Sutton was taking 5 or 6 guys out to Arizona. They had rented a van, and they were going to go out there and spend the weekend. And I told them I thought it was a real bad idea. And I thought they should just fly to the West Coast officers meeting that was being held in Cave Creek and don't go. I tried to go. They wouldn't allow me to travel. Sutton insisted that they were going to drive out there. And like I said, I got a gut feeling it was not a good idea. And as things revealed itself, I would have probably had a sterner voice if I'd known some of the things that had gone on prior to them leaving. But Josh was standing out in front of a bar, and he was approached by an unidentified man. They had a brief conversation, didn't appear to be hostile, and they were close enough where they could touch each other. And the bigger man reached in his waistband, pulled out a gun, stuck it under Josh's chin, and pulled the trigger, shooting him. And several witnesses at the bar, that were regulars, described the shooter as a white male, 6'1", 250 pounds, 240 pounds, driving a red Honda. Now, not long after Josh's murder, Hoover was murdered, and right down the street from that same bar. And law enforcement and Hells Angels as well said Sonny and I were feuding, and it was a classic tit for tat, and that I had ordered the retaliation. That information on the shooter was consistent with one exception. I was told by members of the club that were there that the shooter was not white. He was Mexican with long curly hair. And that fit the perfect description of somebody that I ultimately felt was responsible. And, over the years, my focus shifted and focused on one person, and that person was Robert Chico Mora. I know he was capable of taking care of business. He'd done time for murdering some guys in a little bike club, a couple of guys, I think the club might have been called Bat Company. I don't remember. And, there was bad blood between Ventura and Chico. Chico and I had words before I got arrested in the Ventura clubhouse. My daughter had represented him. We bailed him out. And not only did he jump bail on us, he really kind of humiliated my daughter. She had a thing all set up in court, and he never showed. And I took that personal. You don't fuck with my family. And Chico just had no respect. So he left the clubhouse. Him and I had words at the clubhouse. I thought it was going to come to blows. He left town, and that was basically the last time I saw him in person. And then I found out later that a member, Tim in Ventura, had sold him a bike, and the VIN numbers weren't good. Chico thought that he'd got burned, so he had some hard feelings with Ventura about that. In addition, while I was in custody in 2001 at the New Year's party in San Fernando Valley, the Ventura charter and charter Chico, I can't remember where Chico was at the time, but Chico's charter, they got in an argument, and the Ventura guys pulled the Arizona members' patch, and that turned into just a friggin' mess. And I tell you, I didn't have a lot of respect for Chico, and I'll tell you why. Certainly, the incident with my daughter, his cavalier attitude just towards Ventura, and the disrespect he showed us. But Chico was the one that instigated all the shit with Sonny on the 911 call. And I write about it in the new book I'm going to release this year. And all these things would come out over the next few years that transpired. My information that the shooter was Mexican really solidified it for me that it was Chico. Now, some of you might be, crying, why are you giving up Chico? Well, Chico's dead. And Chico can handle as much heat as thrown on him. And, do I have a message for Chico? Well, he's dead. But if he was to get the message from me, I just say, hey, you know what, Chico, I'll see you in hell, man. And we'll deal with this then. So that's my little story about what happened with Josh Harber. I think it's only appropriate in the next few weeks I do something on Hoover, kind of even this thing out. But that's it for this week. Continue to support us here, follow us, and comment. I like your comments. So that's it. I'll see you all. Thanks for the support.